Webinar today is called Understanding the Customer Journey in Real Organizations. Now, if you know me and you've listened to any of my content before, maybe we've worked together, you will know that the concept of customer journey is very, very close to my heart. I do find as a marketer, it is probably up there. Well, almost certainly up there in the top three concepts for me in terms of marketing process, marketing experience, and actually my kind of whole role as a professional business person. It really is for me that important. So what we're going to focus on today is to put customer journey, the concept of choreographing an experience for your customer from the very first touch point you ever have with them through to them becoming a lifelong advocate. And we're going to do this in practice. It's all very well seeing this on a flip chart or in a textbook, but actually putting it into practice is the really powerful piece. So we're going to look at how we can connect those touch points that I mentioned, how we can drive a more impactful, immersive experience for our customers, and at the same time, drive better performance for our businesses. So I'd like you to think of a recent purchase or service experience that you've had, and what were the key moments that shaped your view of that organization? Could be positive, but it could also be negative, because of course, hidden within a customer journey are a whole host of feelings and thoughts that can very much convey how we are going to be feeling about that brand or that product or that service. So I'd just like you to think just briefly about an experience that you've had recently, maybe online or in person, and think about the impacts that certain touch points had and how those impacts shape how you think about that organization. Because we're all going through customer journeys every day, often, big chunks of every day. And so it isn't just about the outbound product or marketing or service that we're producing for the world. It's actually how we experience it too. So it is a very practical concept. And it really does matter because customer journeys are very rarely tidy in real organizations. People move across channels, they make different decisions, they use different devices, they might have different moments of need in certain points in the day or days of the week or weeks of the month. So we do really see that everything an organization does, if it is willing to put customer first, then it will be managing those journeys and serving the needs of the customer across all the touch points and interactions that they have. So marketing is not just communication placed in a funnel. It's part of very much a wider lived experience. And this is the key point that we're going to be coming back to time and time again as we start to put the concept of customer journey into practice. So by the end of this session, you should be able to understand really what a customer journey is in practice rather than just theoretical. You should be able to map a simple journey using some real touch points that you have for your customers. Obviously, that is very important to bring it to life in your own business. You should be able to recognize where marketing influences customer experience and where those experiences can be improved and enhanced. Again, continuous improvement is key in the concept of customer journey. And we should obviously be able to identify any pain points and moments that matter, those critical little moments in the journey or in the experience where if you get it right, you've got them for life. If you get it wrong, they're gone probably forever. So these are critical points, and that's why we say these kind of critical points really matter. And we're going to link the journey insight. So the answers to all of those questions, all of those challenges, link those backwards to making or helping us to make better marketing decisions. Again, another key element of our role as a marketer in a business. Okay, so let's go back to the foundations here. What is a customer journey? Well, it's a visualization of a process that the person goes through in order to accomplish a goal. Now, this is from their perspective. Okay, a customer journey is not what you have and what you are. It's the experience the customer has. I mean, the clue is in the title. It's the customer's journey through your website, through your digital experience, through your interaction, maybe face to face. And so what we're doing here is we're seeing in very simple terms what the customer's trying to do, the steps they take, the touch points they actually encounter, how that makes them think and feel, and whether or not it helps or hinders their progress to accomplishing their goal. So they come to you with a need or with a challenge or with a problem to solve. Your role is to choreograph a journey, map out a journey for them so that they can accomplish that goal. It's all about them. So when businesses or marketers say, I put my customer first, this is the language they're actually talking. This is really what they're doing. So they're not just saying it, not paying lip service to how they feel they should say things. They're actually doing it. So this is what's important here. It genuinely is, and it just has to be the customer's journey. It's not your journey, it's theirs. So you can map out some journeys, but they have to take that journey before they own it. So, a little reflection for you here. Are you currently looking at the journey from the customer's point of view or from the organization's process view? Because, as I say, you've got to map this thing out, but then it becomes theirs. So, there's this little kind of contextual balance between the two things. You've got to create something for them, but then it's about them owning it and taking those journeys, taking those steps on the journey that you've just crafted. So, do you do it from your perspective? Being really, really honest, we probably do. Most of us do. Or are you actually trying to see it through the customer's lens? Because then it becomes super powerful. So the journey, I keep saying about this mapping and choreographing and plotting out this customer journey. What is it in its most simple form? Well, it often includes stages, actions, touch points, thoughts and feelings, pain points, probably, and also moments of truth, those little awakenings where it's kind of somebody's moving from maybe the first phase of the journey where they're just building awareness of who you are and what you have to offer through to a point of, oh, okay, I'm going to commit to this brand, going to commit to this business because they can solve my challenge or my problem. Those are moments of truth when they start to make decisions within the journey. It's your role to help them to do that. So the journey mapping starts with actions in sequence, but then you enrich it with thoughts and emotions to create a story or a narrative. Because we need to kind of fuel a journey. I mean, having steps and touch points and all this kind of thing mapped out is all very well. And of course, it is important. Those are the foundations or the building blocks. But we need to put a fuel into this machine. And the fuel is the storytelling. So, how are we going to draw people in? How are we going to keep them engaged in this journey? And always, of course, encouraging them to the next step. So a journey is not just what the company sends, it's what the customer experiences. And that narrative is going to be that fuel that kind of draws them deeper and deeper into the journey. Now, at this point, some of you might be thinking, well, actually, this sounds a bit like a sales funnel. And in some ways, it kind of is. But a funnel is mainly the organization's view of movement towards conversion. The journey, if you look at this from a pure marketing sense, is the customer's view of trying to achieve something. So funnels are used for measurement and journeys are useful for understanding experience. Both of those matter. In real organizations, you kind of have, they are kind of one of the same thing, but they come from different perspectives. So the sales funnel, as the name implies, is funneling people through to a sale. And the journey does that as well, but it's from the customer's perspective. So marketing needs the commercial discipline of the funnel and then the empathy of the journey. So this is where we're looking at thoughts and feelings. So the brain is working with the funnel because it's the thinking part, and then the journey is working with the heart, which is the feeling part. So Nielsen Norman Group say that a journey map is a visualization of the process that a person goes through in order to accomplish a goal. And of course, the goal from the business's perspective, your perspective and mine, is to ensure that we get a conversion, we get some business, we get a product or service sale so that we can develop the relationship having actually made some commercial value from it. Balancing that with, but did the customer get best value? Did they perceive from their perspective that this was something worth doing and they'd come back again? Because all of this matters. So the goal is central, and the good journey work begins with what the customer's trying to achieve, not necessarily what the business wants to push. And this is where we talk about putting customer first. This is the difference between literally selling, just hard selling, and actually thinking about customer experience, which will then result, if it's done well, in a sale. So, real organizations, of course, are not just focused on this kind of marketing and sales thing. So, the customer journey will often go way, way beyond that. So, yes, the marketing experience, yes, the sales interaction, but also deeper then into things like customer service, operations, maybe the digital team, physical location. Like I mentioned before, a lot of us think about digital as being customer journey, but it's every touch point. So, therefore, physical locations. And of course, if you appear on third party platforms as well, those have all got to be factored in because they are touch points in the customer's experience or journey. And if you think about it, really from the customer's perspective, at any one point in time, the customer sees one journey, doesn't it? Or don't they? Because even when the organization is split into many teams, working cross functionally, maybe you have different routes and paths the customer could take on the journey. So you give them choices and options as you're plotting this out step by step. They could go down that route or they could come in this direction. From the customer's perspective, it is just one journey. It's the journey that you're helping them to go along, but it's also their choices. So they kind of are where they are in the journey. And it probably is just one single point, and then they go to the next one and the next one. So in lots of ways, it is quite linear, even if you have plotted out something that's really complex. And that's a nice little reminder of the difference between your perspective and their perspective. Their perspective is, I've come on this journey. Your perspective is, yeah, and I gave you loads of choices on that journey, but they're all going to end up at pretty much the same place. You know that. They don't need to know that because from their perspective, they are on a high value route map. And that's what that's about. So these touch points then that kind of help them to go step by step along this route map are any points of contact between the customer and you. Okay, so examples could be the search results they find, social posts, website pages, step by step by step, email messages they receive, phone calls, possibly, sales conversations, yeah, in certain industries, of course, reviews that they might read, the in store or in venue experience, onboarding emails after they've consumed or purchased, invoices, customer support, etc., etc., etc. Now, the key thing here is kind of who owns each touch point. In your organization, are each of those touch points clearly owned by marketing or by sales or by customer service or somewhere else in the organization? Because for organizations where the customer journey isn't quite so clear and obvious, it's often because there isn't ownership of every single touch point. So things fall by the wayside, they fall through the cracks, they fall between the teams, and nobody's actually accountable. So the key really here when you're doing the customer journey is to think organization wide, is to think everybody who is involved here is probably going to take accountability for one or more different steps in this journey. And if they do, it means we've got to work together. If they do, it means the customer will always have somebody or somewhere to go. And it possibly goes way beyond marketing, probably should go way beyond marketing at certain points in the journey. But this is really, really important stuff because it takes it into a practical sense away from just the theoretical. Yes, that looks a nice route map. It brings it really into the business. So it gets embedded, it gets owned, it becomes accountable, and it becomes very real. And then the value starts to come through. And of course, in all of these touch points, in all of these moments, not each individual step carries equal weight. Some moments will shape trust, some moments will shape confidence or build that confidence, some might even cause frustration much more strongly. So, examples could be your first inquiry response, a checkout or application form, delivery or onboarding, complaint handling, renewal or repeat purchase moments. McKinsey's work on omnichannel experience stresses this is so, so important. The importance of creating compelling journeys right across every channel rather than treating each interaction in isolation. Because, of course, one weak moment can damage a strong campaign or a strong interaction. And it is that the strength of the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. I mean, it's an old kind of saying, but it's so, so true in customer journey. You could be doing a miraculous job, be best in class, best in the world up to a point. But if that point breaks, if that link in the chain or that step in the journey fails, everything else comes down like a pack of cards falling down. So it's really, really key to be thinking across channels, across teams, across departments. So this stuff takes time. But as you're hearing already, it is so, so worth it from the customer's perspective. So a practical model, the stages of a journey, I mean, a very simple kind of one. Well, probably the easiest one is awareness, conversion, retention. Those are the ones that are the kind of the core building blocks. But from the customer's perspective, a simple journey structure could be the recognition of a need, researching against that need possible solutions, consideration of the options, making a decision from those options, the purchase or sign up for solving it with that product or service, the onboarding or first use of that product or service, the ongoing and follow up support or service that's provided. And then in time, hopefully, with fair wind, it's going to be loyalty or advocacy, even. And so, where is marketing most active in this journey, in your role, in your company? And where's it less visible but still influential? There'll be certain points in here, probably for most of us, further upstream. So, helping to set the scene, if you like, helping to warm the market up. So, at that awareness stage, the need recognition, the research, consideration. Because, of course, often the sales team or the salesperson is there helping and getting the person over the line in the decision process. But we can still support there too with advocacy, with testimonials and reviews, etc. So there's always a part for marketing to play. But I want you to think about where's marketing most influential and most active in this journey, because those are your starting points to take accountability and ownership in the customer journey. And then starting to work with others or bringing others into the journey as you plot this out, because they will be potentially the handover points. So you might sort of say, okay, we can take the customer to this point, but then because of the way our business works, we need to then hand over the customer to the next stage of the journey. And you can't just hand them over into some sort of void. There has to be a joined up experience, as we've said before. So here's a couple of examples for you just to kind of put this into some sort of context. I mean, imagine in retail, a customer wants some new running shoes. So what could the journey look like there? Well, a typical kind of journey example would be they see a social ad, maybe ad on socials. They search for reviews. They visit the website. They check the stock and the delivery. They buy on their mobile. They receive a confirmation email. They get delivery updates, and then they leave a review when the product arrives. So there we go. Simple kind of early stage example from a retail perspective. So what would a marketer's role be in each of those kind of stages? Well, it's probably the creative message. It might be retargeting. It's almost certainly the product page content, some follow-up email reassurance, and post-purchase follow-up. So there are some very specific roles and functions that marketers would take in that stage of the customer's journey. So the campaign may work, but a poor mobile checkout or unclear delivery promise can still lose the sale. So there's always little moments there that you've got to watch out for, because those things could actually make what otherwise would be a great campaign and a great experience can actually make it fail. So I'll use another example here, maybe say higher education. So a prospective student wants to apply for a course. So the journey example would be they do a search online, they find some courses pages and they sort of drill down, they download a prospectus, they attend maybe an open day virtually or in person, they ask questions, they inquire, they submit their application, they receive updates, and then they join and enroll. So what would marketing's role be? Well, it could be search visibility, it could be content clarity, communications or managing of the event, that open day. It could be, almost certainly would be email nurturing as they're going through the consideration stage, and expectation setting. So the lesson here really is that marketing is not just about attracting the inquiry. Most people say, oh, we'll do some marketing. And what they actually mean is we're just going to do that very, very first tip of the iceberg sort of touch point. But actually, it also shapes confidence throughout the decision process because you're keeping close to the customers. They go through their journey. You're almost by their side at each and every step. You know what you're going to provide. Maybe you stay just one step ahead of them. That would be a neat way of doing things. And so you're always there as this kind of backup to ensure that it's a frictionless, seamless journey for the customer as they come into this process. Another example, B2B. So maybe a buyer's looking for a new software or industrial solution, for example. So their journey would be, it's a little bit more complicated with B2B because of the amount of internal stakeholders who they might have to consult with. But a general kind of process could be the problem emerges internally. So it comes out of a meeting or some kind of discussion. The research begins. They've got to identify actually what is that problem and how could we potentially solve it. The supplier shortlist is created when they have identified the project or the problem, and then they figured out, well, we need this product or this service to solve it. So they then create their shortlist of potential suppliers. From each of those, they request the demo. They internally consult every stakeholder who's going to need to be part of this buying decision. The commercial proposal is reviewed, the decision's made, and then the onboarding begins. So marketing's role here probably starts a lot further upstream. So it could be about establishing thought leadership around these kinds of problems. It could be, and probably should be, creating and sharing case studies, website proof points as well, where you see testimonials. Maybe these are videos or written testimonials of similar companies who have had similar problems that have been solved. Email nurturing throughout this process, which can be quite protracted because in B2B, often the lead times are quite long in these buying decisions. And then sales enablement content, enabling sales who are probably going to have a number of different touch points with this customer. And it could be that there are different people in the organization that you need to be talking to at different levels and with different disciplines. So it gets a lot more complicated potentially. But the journeys being longer, involving multiple stakeholders, and depending heavily on reassurance and proof to build that confidence you're the guys to go with, that can all be part of the marketer's role within the B2B customer journey. And finally, a case study example in, say, the service sector. So a patient or client wants some support, but they need it quickly. So the journey example could be that they search symptoms or services, they read reviews, they check availability, they call or book online, they attend an appointment, they receive a follow-up, and there are potentially returns if the experience was good, because they will come back if they enjoyed what they saw or if this service was frictionless. So the customer experience lesson here is that trust, clarity, and speed often matter more than clever promotion. And this is all about deciding whether or not you are going to shout from the hilltops the kinds of things that you do and offer. So it's just going to be promote, promote, promote. Or if what you're going to do is for these kinds of high trust categories like healthcare, education, or finance, where it is about building confidence, reputation, and the trust that you need to convey, then basically what you can be doing is thinking a lot more about thought leadership around these kinds of symptoms or services that are required. So really setting yourself out as an organization that provides a confident, clear, and trustworthy service. And that's part of the journey. That again is marketing's role here. So the journey kind of plotting and planning can start way upstream, even before the customer is involved. And that's really the emphasis that we're talking about here. We're looking at sort of building here a route map, but it probably is building it in advance, quite some way in advance, creating a plan, looking at who we need to involve, and then starting to populate each step with some very clear process, but also content, and also very clear calls to action. Because if we say that there are going to be a number of different kind of stages, if you like, as we build this map, then we need to be handing off a customer from one stage to the next. So the concept of, and you'll know this phrase, call to action. In other words, what is the call to taking action for that customer at each and every step? That is critical. It's absolutely critical. The customer knows, or even the prospect early in the customer journey, they know what the next step is going to be, and they can take it very, very smoothly and easily. So maybe then we start to construct a basic journey map, and it could include, say, 5 columns of stage, customer action, touch point, thought or feeling, and opportunity to improve. And so we can start to build a nice matrix, a nice plan that helps us then to decide what kind of storytelling, what kind of visualization, what kind of message or content or data needs to be put into each stage. And so a useful journey map should act and help a team to act, not just decorate a workshop or a meeting room wall. This is the key. So these are very action oriented steps, because what we need to do is be able to take action to improve what we've already got. Because, of course, remember, even if you decide not to plan a journey, you're still providing a journey. The only thing is, with an unplanned journey, it's going to be pretty chaotic. And imagine what kind of experience that is going to be like for your customer. So from journey map to a service blueprint, this is what we're going to try and do here. So the journey map shows the customer experience, but the service blueprint, which is kind of like a layer, if you like, over the top, adds what the organization must do behind the scenes to serve that customer experience. So service blueprints are often described as diagrams showing the relationships between people, processes, and evidence. And then those are tied to the touch points in the customer journey. And this is going to really help you really understand that a customer issue is often a process issue. It might not be a problem for the customer. Actually, it's a process issue internally. And a customer experience is not owned by marketing alone. It is probably building in some of these other disciplines in your organization. And so it kind of reminds us a lot of the time when we're building this service blueprint about who's going to do what and when for each step in the journey. It really, really emphasizes and reminds us that internal collaboration matters. Absolutely crucial. At every step in the journey, we need to be sharing this stuff. So we never say this is a marketing journey. We never say this is a marketing customer journey. It's the customer's journey with this service blueprint layer that sits across the top that enables us to say, okay, there's a gap here. There's a journey kind of jump there. There's a go from that step to that step, but nobody's looking at this. Nobody's owning it. Who's going to step up? Who's going to own that part of the journey? Because somebody needs to. Otherwise, we'll have people falling through the gap there, and then we'll lose them. So it's a really nice reminder, but also a very real and practical way of turning the theory into practice. And so when we're talking about these gaps and these issues, a lot of the time what we're actually identifying is that these are real problems in real organizations. I mean, the typical kind of issues that you will see, and I'm sure you've experienced some of these yourself: inconsistent messaging across channels, slow follow-up, poor handover between marketing and sales, or between sales and customer support, or customer support and technical. Often is the case. Too many steps in the journey. I'm talking about plotting out and planning out a customer journey of every touch point, but maybe you've just got too many touch points and too many steps. That can be either overwhelming or just tedious from the customer's perspective. So you've got to be careful with that. It's all very well getting excited and passionate, but there's a balance to strike here. Weak mobile experience. As we know, digital first is often the way and often the case, particularly early and late in the journey. So therefore, how is this looking across multiple devices? Confusing information. Maybe there's contradictory information. Maybe some of the sales material versus the marketing messages, the campaign versus the actual customer experience when somebody phones up. These things do not join up necessarily. It's confusing for the customer. Lack of ownership, we've mentioned this a number of times. This is not just a marketing challenge. Marketing can lead it, but it's a broader business thing. And good campaigns undermined by poor service delivery, where marketing goes for it 100%, 100 miles an hour, and then the business doesn't actually deliver on those promises. What we need to be doing here, and really this is highlighting the need to streamline journeys across all channels, ensure that this is not too complex, ensure there's no friction, ensure that nothing gets fragmented because any of those problems, any of those challenges not solved will damage the experience. And as we know from my very first question, right at the start of this session here today, the thing I said was, what was the last experience that you had and how did that make you think and feel? We know that we're going through this day in, day out, and we know that we can switch just like that if the experience is not good. So it's absolutely vital to attend to each and every one of these challenges, nip them in the bud before they happen, but also then preempt things that might possibly be a challenge in the future and solve them by good internal collaboration. And what we need to also do here is kind of see that marketing really is the driver. I've said that, marketing doesn't necessarily own everything, but it does influence the whole experience. It really does. I mean, we can exert our influence and, we are the voice of the customer in the organization if we're properly doing our role. So we should be listening. We should be acting. We should be setting expectation, the tone of voice, the clarity of the content, choices of channels, personalization if we can, and we probably should, the timing of the experience, trust signals that we can put out there, and follow up and reassurance. Organizations that are working really well are analyzing how they perform across the customer journey all the time, every day. They're understanding the full journey rather than just single channel activity. So maybe if you're not already thinking about your reporting dashboards, your reporting and your analytics, the way that you talk back into the organization about how your marketing is doing, maybe now it starts to take a more holistic view of the journey rather than just individual channels and looking at, your social media or your website in isolation. This is where we are going to be able to take some really good, confident, proactive steps. So this is not just going and working with what we've done before. This is about actually taking a proper strategic look at how everything we do joins up. So I would suggest to you, if you want to be doing this stuff and really making your customer journeys real, is start with one real customer goal, possibly a significant one. Map what actually happens, not what should happen. What's the realistic view right now? Use evidence from websites, emails, calls, reviews, and colleagues' internal stuff as well. Use the evidence to start to look for friction, delay, and confusion, those little moments of potential improvement. Notice the emotional moments as well as the actions. Are you making people feel as well as how you're making them think? And also challenge and ask who owns each touch point. If you're mapping this out, you've then got a very clear map that shows you can put that service blueprint over the top and identify who owns what are they doing and when, are there any gaps? And identify one or two, just to start with, just one or two improvements that could be made by marketing or that marketing can influence and begin with those first. I mean, if you mapped just one journey this week for one customer segment or one persona, which one do you think and feel would teach you the most? Because that could be a really great quick win for marketing improvement in the coming weeks. So the key takeaways that I want to leave you with is that customer journeys in real organizations, yeah, in reality, they can be messy. They are cross-functional and they're shaped by many, many touch points. But you and I, as marketers, play an important role, but not the only role in the customer's experience and the customer journey. The more you clearly map the real journey, the better you can improve experience, communication, and ultimately commercial results because more people will come through the journey without falling at the bottlenecks or those little gaps, and more people will convert and stay loyal. So, a final reflection for you. What is one part of your customer's journey that would most benefit from being properly mapped? Because that is your starting point if you really want to understand your customer's journey in your organization.